We invite you to watch how we clear the views on all matters through our partner station MITV on DSTV channel 255, 7 p.m. daily, and also our YouTube and Facebook pages under one name, Clearview News Desk every day. We call it the People's News, as we are available to come over and cover your events upon notice. Or do you have news you want us to broadcast? Send it in. We verify and go to town with it. All for you. Go ahead, engage us to thrash out those naughty issues on the news. And what we need from you is to share and subscribe. More important, convince your loved ones, friends, relatives, co-worshippers, and more to subscribe so as to be getting notifications as we break the news. Go a step further, like the news, and drop your thoughts on the comment section. Clearview News. We clear the view one time and for all time.
Hello and welcome to Clearview News Desk. We are reaching you live from Nigeria's capital city, Abuja. First, the headlines.
40-year-old woman set self ablaze after being divorced by her husband in Guri local government area of Jigawa State. 4 years after, 6 men arrested during 2020 #EndSARS protest in Lagos finally regain freedom. Cardinal John ONAIYEKAN, civil society organizations and AREWA youths call for immediate release of protesters of the nationwide #EndBadGovernance protests.
I am Gloria Atta with these and more. Welcome. A 40-year-old woman named Withheld has set herself on fire after her husband divorced her in Guri local government area of Jigawa State. The state's police public relations officer, DSP Lawan Shisu, confirmed the incident in a statement in Duse this Friday. Shisu said the woman, who resides in Garim Malam village, poured petrol on her body and set herself on fire. He said the command on Thursday received the heartbreaking and pitiful news of the incident from Guri. She was reported to have carried out the suicide on the outskirts of the village. Shisu explained that a preliminary investigation revealed that the deceased experienced depression a few months following her divorce from her husband. The PPRO added that the Commissioner of Police in the state, Mr. Amadu Abdullahi, advised people to always submit their affairs to Almighty Allah for a way out. Abdullahi also advised people to always seek advice and counseling from their elders on complex issues to avoid such unfortunate incidents. May her soul rest in peace. Now, a Lagos State Magistrate Court in Ogba has discharged 6 men who were arrested during the 2020 #EndSARS protests and have spent almost 4 years in prison. The defendants, identified as Daniel Joimbo, Adigun Sodiq, Kehinde Shola, Salaudin Kamilu, Sadiq Usaini and Aziz Isiaka, were set free by Magistrate Bolanle Ogunsomi on Thursday after being cautioned. The defendants were discharged after pleading guilty to a single amended charge brought against them by the Lagos State government. The charge, dated August 22, 2024, accused them of conducting themselves in a manner likely to cause a breach of peace, a violation under Section 168 subsection D of the Criminal Law of Lagos State 2015. According to the Director of Public Prosecutions, Dr. Babajide Martins, the alleged offense took place on November 23, 2020 at around 12 p.m. in the Ebute Metta area of Lagos. The punishment for the offense of conduct likely to cause a breach of the peace under Section 168 subsection D of the Criminal Law of Lagos State 2015 stipulates 3 months punishment or a fine of 15,000 naira. However, the court may impose either or both of the fine and imprisonment depending on the severity of the case and other circumstances. And back home in Abuja, the Emeritus Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, Cardinal John ONAIYEKAN, civil society organizations, and AREWA youths have called for the immediate release of protesters during the nationwide #EndBadGovernance protest held between August 1 and 10, 2024. This came on a day rights lawyer and chairman of Alliance on Surviving COVID-19 and Beyond, Femi Falana-San, said his group will not hesitate to sue the federal government should it fail to either arraign those arrested before August 25 or release them. He also disclosed that of the 2,111 suspects arrested during the protests, 1,403 had been remanded in prisons across the country. Speaking on the issue in Abuja on Wednesday, Cardinal ONAIYEKAN, while making a case for the immediate release of the suspects, said the unarmed protesters are not the cause of Nigeria's problems. He called on the president to take initiative and dialogue with all those who are unhappy. On his part, Falana, in a statement titled "Halt the Clampdown on Protesters," said, instead of subjecting the #EndBadGovernance protesters to unwarranted clampdown, the federal government should either release or arraign the scores of detained suspects before appropriate courts without any further delay. He said if all the suspects are not charged before August 25, 2024, ASCAB will approach the Federal High Court to demand their immediate release, adding that the group has also resolved to defend the cases filed against the protests by 2 state governments, Lagos and Ogun, and the Federal Capital Territory, FCT. The Nigerian Education Loan Fund, (NELFund), says it has received an additional 50 billion naira from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) to boost its efforts in providing financial support to students across Nigeria. The amount, which is part of the recovered proceeds of crime by the nation's anti-graft agency, was released to the Students' Loan Agency following a directive to that effect by President Bola TINUBU. In a statement on Friday by its Director, Corporate Communications, Mrs. Osheyemi Oluwatui, NELFund said the infusion of funds will significantly boost its ability to provide much-needed financial support to students, enabling them to pursue their academic aspirations without financial hindrance. The statement reads in full: the management of NELFund has expressed its pleasure as it receives an additional 50 billion naira from the EFCC. The release follows the directive of President Bola TINUBU in his speech on 4 August 2024, directing the EFCC to transfer the funds to NELFund to further boost the student loan program. This significant injection of funds represents a major milestone in the administration's commitment to bolstering access to education by providing financial support to students across Nigeria. Throughout African history, several leaders have become synonymous with longevity in political office, leaving an indelible mark on their nations and the continent as a whole. These figures have often shaped the course of their country's development, sometimes with controversial legacies. These leaders exemplify the complex intersections of power, governance, and longevity in African politics. While some have been praised for their initial contributions to nation building and development, others have faced criticism for stifling democracy and perpetuating corruption. Their stories underscore the challenges and controversies associated with prolonged political leadership in Africa, reflecting broader debates about governance and accountability on the continent. One notable example is Paul Biya of Cameroon. After serving as the president for 4 decades, supporters are urging the world's oldest leader, 91-year-old Cameroonian President Paul Biya, to run for office in the 2025 presidential election, potentially extending his more than 4-decade rule. They say Biya is the only one who can bring peace and development to the country. If you are just joining us, you're watching the news on Clearview News Desk. We will be back after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Stakeholders from various sectors have concluded a one-day high-level summit on constitutional inclusion of women in governance, with emphasis on the importance of women's inclusion in governance. The event, held in Abuja, was organized by the African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development, with support from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office through the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center. The report.
According to the report, women constitute approximately 49.45% of Nigeria's total population, highlighting their demographic strength and potential to drive transformative change. The summit aimed to harmonize efforts and actions by stakeholders and organizations on women's inclusion in governance, foster synergy, and map out a joint strategy for collective impact. Speaking at the summit, the executive director of the African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development, Monday, represented by Mark Barboro, emphasized the need for women's inclusion in governance. Also speaking at the event, leaders of the 10th National Assembly pledged to prioritize women's inclusion, acknowledging the low level of women's representation in governance. Other notable stakeholders present at the event highlighted the need for continued conversation and action to address the gender disparity.
In Nigeria, the journey towards women inclusion in governance has been long and challenging. It has been documented that constitution making in Nigeria has persistently excluded female legitimacy. This exclusion dates back to the colonial times, when women were not allowed to vote. In fact, it was not until 1979 before the right to vote was extended to all Nigerian women. The language of the Constitution is in masculine gender and totally excludes women.
Going by what we see and hear of what His Excellency does to humanity, I want to re-inform you that he is an advocate of women inclusion. So if these decisions are taken before the 10th National Assembly, I want to assure you, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will be looked into and they will be implemented.
We will ensure that all the bills that were rejected come back alive again, by the grace of God.
In examining the electoral outcomes from 2015 and 2019 elections, it is evident that women's political representation remains disappropriately low compared to their population size. This underscores the need for collective action to address the gender gap in governance.
But I think as we are thinking about women inclusion, I think we should also be thinking about also progressive voices in Nigerian politics. It seems to me that as time goes on, progressive voices are continuously being marginalized in our own politics. The people who are able to get into our politics are increasingly people who are bent on being the only ones that are allowed to speak in our system.
All strive for a society where every woman does not just try to survive and feel safe, and societies where women, they are confident that there is space for them to thrive.
And I'm sure in the last couple of months, we've all been in separate programs celebrating 25 years of unbroken democracy in Nigeria. And this conversation is very fundamental to that narrative. We need, as Nigerians, to make this step as we progress our democratic processes.
I would also like us to promote gender equality in agriculture, in education,
and in employment.
Important that we give an equal opportunity to both men and women in every space to contribute to the development of this country.
The summit marked the beginning of a collaborative effort to prioritize women's inclusion in governance. The development of a joint strategy and actions for collective impact will be crucial in ensuring that women's voices are heard and represented in decision-making processes. Florence Joshua reporting for Clearview News Desk.
A difficult mother-in-law is someone who consistently creates negativity and tension within the family. This individual might be overly controlling, critical and disrespectful, often interfering in their child's marriage or parenting decisions. They may not respect boundaries and expect everything to revolve around their desires. In this special report, Clearview News' Imefuno Kon sought the opinion of a marriage counselor how a daughter-in-law can handle a difficult mother-in-law. The report.
Marriage is a sacred and lifelong covenant meant to be the first priority among all human relationships. According to a marriage counselor, Dorothy Nuhu, children are supposed to leave their parents and cleave to their new spouse, while parents are supposed to honor their children's marital relationship, support and allow them to focus on their marital lives. However, sometimes the mother still wants to control and have the highest alliance from her son, expecting him to put her above his wife, while a daughter-in-law gets jealous over the husband and his mother's relationship, especially in a situation where he gives her more attention. In what ways can a daughter-in-law manage a perceived difficult mother-in-law?
In that one-off situation where the mother-in-law is perceived to be difficult, the best thing is to have communication. Let's have dialogue. Let's discuss. In a situation where that discussion is not working, let's look for help. Maybe the pastor in the community, the mother-in-law can listen to the pastor, maybe to another family member that they respect, so that they are, the whole thing boils down to communication. It's important that we have a space where everybody can express themselves in a manner that they can be heard, that they can be listened to. But where everybody is raising voices, where everybody is shutting down the other, then it's difficult to negotiate peace. It's difficult to resolve crisis. So the daughter-in-law needs to look for that space. And that space can be either the space that is managed by the pastor or an elder in the family or a good friend of the mother-in-law that can stabilize the atmosphere enough for her to be able to drive her point home.
Dorothy said parental education is very critical in managing conflict and maintaining a healthy and happy relationship between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law.
However, all of these are preventable in the first place. And that is where we have parent-child education. Because most parents in that situation are in that situation because they don't realize that their children are now grown up and can make their decisions. In other words, they have not weaned the child. Even though the child is an adult, they are still clutching the child onto their apron string and trying to call the shots, even in that child's life. And so parent education is very critical, and it should happen early so that as the mother and father are bringing up their child, they know at what point to let the child go at every stage of growth and development of the child. That is important, and it should be, deliberate. We have to have spaces for parent education, because when the child starts to go to school, we are weaning the child off a bit. When they start to go to boarding house, we are weaning them off further. When they have friends, we are releasing them to have their own space, their own time with their own friends. Then when they start to have relationships and they are in love, we have to wean them off some more. And then when they get married, then we have to be prepared and ready, because we know that they are starting a home. We shouldn't be pock-nosing, because we should have done enough job by bringing them up well enough for us not to be panic and be fretting whether they are healthy or whether they are okay in their relationships. and we wouldn't be tempted to go and take over and ease up that space instead of letting them be.
Experts say husbands should ideally be the one to protect their wives from his family and help to navigate any contention between his wife and family. Imefonokun reporting for Clever News.
Going, gone. This is not the bidding of a property or a product, but for a human being that was up for grabs. This is the story of an 18-year-old virgin, Anthiak Dauriak Magani from South Sudan, who went viral for attracting two wealthy suitors. She has now been married off to the highest bidder. The young virgin became an internet sensation after two business tycoons offered between 105 to 350 cattle and whopping sums of money among other gifts as dowry in a bid to win her heart. Let's now join Clearview's correspondent for details of this and a spotlight into South Sudan's unique traditional marriage practice.
It was a day of singing and dancing as Athiak Dauriak Magani, an 18-year-old virgin from the Nook section of Pakir, Twig Dinka community, Jonglei state of South Sudan, was married off in a colorful marriage ceremony to Chol Marol Deng, one of the country's billionaires. The 18-year-old took the internet by storm, attracting the attention of two wealthy men in a highly publicized marriage competition. According to local South Sudanese media, the first suitor, one Marial Garang Giel, had pledged a grand offer of 125 head of cattle and 100 million South Sudanese pounds, approximately $35,000, while his rival, Chol Marol Deng, offered an even larger bid of 123 head of cattle, 110 million South Sudanese pounds, around $44,000, and a piece of land. Some local media outlets also reported that he offered her family a Toyota V6 and a promise to build them a house. Following weeks of intense deliberations and negotiations, the marriage competition was brought to an end with the declaration of the second suitor, Chol Marol Deng, as the winner. A week after Athiak Dao's parents chose her suitor, the young woman, who stands at about 7 feet tall, was married off in a colorful traditional wedding to the admiration of family, friends, and well-wishers. Marriages like Athiak Dao's are not new to the people of South Sudan. The practice of auctioning out a lady for competition before marriage has been in existence for decades and form part of the Dinka culture of South Sudan, where men showcase their wealth by throwing in pledges of large herds of cattle, substantial monetary sums, among other gifts as dowries to the families of their prospective brides. Athiak became the topic of debates and discussions as her marriage negotiations had surpassed the customary limits. The Dinka, also known as Jiang, are the largest ethnic tribe in South Sudan and are known for their traditional forms of agriculture and livestock raising. Cattle play a part in almost all aspects of their life, including ceremonies and rites of passage. When boys transition to manhood, a ritual is performed where they take on new names centered around cattle. Gloria Atta, reporting for Clearview News.
And that's the news. But before we go, a recap of the top stories.
A 40-year-old woman has set herself on fire after her husband divorced her in Guri local government area of Jigawa State. A Lagos State Magistrate Court in Ogba has discharged 6 men who were arrested during the 2020 #EndSARS protests and have spent almost 4 years in prison. We also told you that Emeritus Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, Cardinal John ONAIYEKAN, civil society organizations and AREWA youths have called for the immediate release of protesters during the nationwide #EndBadGovernance protests held between August 1 and 10, 2024.
You can follow up on latest events and happenings around you via our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Clearview News Desk or via our handle on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Clearview Online. Many thanks for joining us. I am Gloria Atta. Bye for now.